I'm just remembering that scene now.
Yeah, it's really good.
Give me a couple minutes.
Yeah, sure. You take your time. I'm here to talk to you about.
Hi, and welcome to the Literary Hype podcast. I'm Stephanie, your Literary Hype Woman, and today's author conversation is with a debut. This author and I have a mutual friend, and that is how we got connected in the first place, and it turned out to be a really good time. That author is Betty Corrello. She wrote Summertime Punchline, which is about a comedian whose life kind of falls apart right as she's getting a big break on the comedy scene, and so she kind of has to go home to write her jokes and runs into a hot ex. Well, ex is probably too strong. Ex-enemy, ex-bully, ex-crush, who's still a crush. There's a lot of things that you could use to describe Del and Eddie's relationship. We're going to dive into all of that. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Betty Corrello. Welcome to Literary Hype. It's so exciting to have you on to talk about your debut book, Summertime Punchline.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie.
Before we get into the book, we've got to talk about some other random things.
Yeah, well, I love that.
Because we have a mutual friend, so she tells me things.
Uh-oh.
And she's sitting over there laughing. So first off, for your event last night, she was wearing a shirt that said Beef Squad. And she didn't remember why your nickname was Beef. So why is your nickname Beef?
Oh, my nickname is Beef because in this essay I will. So it's a little bit of a long story, but basically there is this dish, this Midwestern dish, or I don't know where it came from, called Beef Lombardi. And I remember when I first heard the name, it like struck me as being like the craziest thing ever because Lombardi is a last name and beef.
It's a trophy.
Yeah, it's a trophy because of the last name. Because of Vince. And then it struck me, I was like, and beef like could absolutely be a first name. And so I told a friend about it and they were going to name their dog Beef Lombardi. And Beef Lombardi has just been kind of in my life. And then I told my writing group about it, and it was a funny story. We were ha ha ha, and the next thing I know, my nickname is Beef, and it really fits.
But they put these on shirts.
Yeah, they did, with the number 69 underneath.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to see people show up with your face on a shirt?
I'm really happy it was a good picture. If it had been an ugly picture, or like, I don't know, I probably would have. No, I would have loved it no matter what. I think my Venus sign, Aries, is in Venus, which is a fire. Do you like astrology? Do you know what this means?
I know very little.
The people
I know I'm a Leo, but that's it.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I think, my love sign is a fire sign, and so there's a lot of passion, and, you know, I'm fiery, and also love attention, so I feel loved when I get attention, which I think is obvious.
What? From a comedian?
Yeah, just begging everywhere I go. Handouts.
Yes, so you are a stand-up comedian as well.
Yeah.
Or as you reference, you say you're a stand-up comedian so you don't get bullied.
Yeah.
Which I want to know how that works. How saying you're a stand-up comedian means you don't get bullied? Explain.
Yeah. In the world of comedy, like, there is definitely, like, tiers to what type, like, from lamest to coolest. Improv nerds really frequently get crapped on, not only in like the comedy world, but then in like regular life too, because it's bled into the mainstream from like 30 Rock and stuff, where like making fun of people who pay for improv. Broad City had an episode about improv classes. It's sort of this like trope that like someone goes and takes improv classes and then like becomes the worst person ever. But maybe that's true. People in my life could tell you that, but I loved improv classes, and I loved doing long form improv. But, you know, I think in order to become like a comedic writer, you have to sort of branch out into stand-up eventually. I think stand-up comics have like a very recognizable place in society, so they are they're not quite rock stars. I'm sure a lot of stand-up comedians think of themselves as rock stars, but there's definitely like an edge to it. There's a little bit of coolness. So I think if I had been like, "Hi, I'm a comedic improviser," and people would have been like, "You're a nerd. You're a nerd for sure." But now I hide behind stand-up a little bit. I've done stand-up. I did stand-up.
There's nothing wrong with being a nerd, though.
Nothing wrong with being a nerd. Hey, everyone at home, nothing wrong with being a nerd. There's a lot wrong with being a nerd. No, I'm kidding. There's nothing wrong with being a nerd. Yeah, be authentic, be yourself. I have to be a role model.
Exactly. Yourself is, everyone else is already taken. Be yourself.
Yeah. I'm going to lean into my improv background. I mean, that's what writing is. Writing fiction is just, you're yes-anding yourself at the keyboard every day.
That's a really cool way to think of it.
Yeah.
Your main character in Summertime Punchline is also a comedian. What kind of experiences did you draw from in your real life to help create this character?
That's a great question. I would definitely say when I wrote Summertime Punchline, it was at the kind of like end of the pandemic-ish era, like full pandemic, and I think I was feeling like there was a possibility that the comedy world would pick back up again. And I was being confronted with a lot of stuff I had kind of left on the back burner when COVID hit all of a sudden, and all live events shut down very abruptly, and a lot of theaters closed, and there was a lot going on, like politically and socially, and we were just, people were in survival mode. And then slowly things were coming back to life, and I realized I had all these feelings about comedy. Like I didn't want to go back to it. I didn't want to go back to grinding in an open mic scene, and I didn't want to go back to hosting things. And I've had all this anger actually that I had left just sitting inside myself about comedy and gatekeepers and what it's like being a woman. Through Dell, I was able to make someone who is like funnier than me and like more successful than me. She gets into basically a fictional equivalent of Just for Laughs, which is a comedy festival in Montreal every year that is known to really launch people's careers. She's on the precipice of something like big and huge, but I feel like anyone who like is about to, we feel it in all moments of our life. When something big's about to happen, you kind of get, there's always like a pull back into yourself and a moment of reflection. And because it's a romance novel, like that pull back, that inner reflection has to like be writ large, like it has to come out. And so through Dell, I was able to channel a lot of my thoughts about stand-up through her, but also doing it through someone who is like more successful and not me, and I was able to work through a lot of stuff through her.
Is it harder to write jokes for stage or write jokes in the form of a novel?
It's harder to write for a stage. For sure, it's harder to write for a stage. Because every time you get up there, an audience, there's like and I talk about this a little bit in the book, there's like a chemistry that happens in a room when you're with people. And that's why I love improv so much, because it really teaches you to be in tune with an audience and to listen to what's hitting and to play off of laughs. So you're waiting for the first big laugh, and then you kind of bookmark that in your mind as like something that hit, and then you come back to it. So you learn all that in improv, but then stand-up it's pre-written, and like you do your material over and over, and that can just be so rough. Like you could get out there and there's an audience, like there's so many tiny factors that go into things. Like something I talk about frequently is getting up on stage as a woman on like a date night. So it's all couples in the audience, and maybe you have couples that are not doing great, and if the man is laughing at you, or like if whatever the dynamic is, like you're now part of their like weird relationship in a way. And you could tell a joke and maybe it's funny, but you see someone do like and you're like, I want to jump through the wall. Like that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Or like maybe you hear people whispering in the back. Like there's so many micro things, and that tension in the room is like you really feed off of it. So if there's one thing that throws you off, it doesn't matter how good the material is, you can really spiral.
Well, let's kind of rewind a smidge and just talk a little bit about what the plot of Summertime Punchline is.
Absolutely. So our main character, Dell, she's a 28-year-old struggling stand-up comedian living in New York, sort of doing the New York scene, as so many people do. She's originally from a shore town in South Jersey, sort of like from the like Philadelphia adjacent part of Jersey. So Dell is in New York. She's doing the comedy grind. She works as a waitress in a comedy club, which comedy clubs are a very specific environment, which I didn't really get into, but they're very traditional in that there's like a hierarchy, and there's people who go to comedy clubs to really work on famous people to work on new material, and there's a stage and there's tables, and the vibes are very specific. So I wanted her to be in a really comedically rigorous and also like food service environment. It comes back. And she, we open on her waking up from her last shift at the comedy club where she just left because she needs to focus on her material and she needs to focus on practicing because she's heading off to this big comedy festival in Canada in like a month and a half. And she has a busy day ahead of her and she decides to drop into her boyfriend's apartment. And she finds her horrible roommate cheating on her with her horrible situationship boyfriend. And she's like, well, I can't go back to my apartment. And this is messed up. And she just realizes, like, she just needs to go back home to take a beat. She's going to borrow her friend's car. She's going to drive back to Evergreen, and she's going to take a moment. And it's on that ride down she realizes, I didn't just lose my place. This isn't temporary. I just quit my job. My roommate, who hates me, was cheating with my boyfriend. And also, all of my jokes are about guys I've dated and my most recent boyfriend. And I'm always shitting on myself. And she just has this big moment of reflection where she's like, I have to start over. Like, I need new material. And that's how we meet Del. And the situation only gets more precarious when she realizes that this guy she was friends with and maybe enemies with and in love with and on again, off again with 10 years ago in high school now runs the only bar in town that does an open mic night. And things get cuckoo crazy bananas from there.
I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Cuckoo crazy bananas.
Yeah. And it's an oversell. Things get emotional from there.
This is also true. So with Eddie,
yes,
this gives you a second chance timeline. What about that trope made you want to include that in the story?
Oh my gosh. Well, their relationship came to me like very fully formed. Like I had this idea about like one of the first scenes I wrote that I really wanted, that hooked me in. I was like, I have to write this story. Is am I allowed to spoil things? I'll keep it light.
Yeah.
It's one of the later flashbacks that originally was in a different kind of order. It's the last flashback, if you remember it, where they confront each other. And originally that was not the last time they saw each other. And it was like a little bit more of a lighter moment. And I could just envision it so perfectly, that sort of sequence, the sequence with her dad leading up to it. And it felt so like, this is what made Del who she is. Like, this is the moment that is crystallized. Like, I think everyone has this. If you cut them open, you cut open their brain, you would find the moment where they became hurt. And I am an Enneagram 4. I love Enneagram. And so I really value sad emotions. I just like things that are a little bit heartbreaking. And I think I see myself as sort of like a fundamentally very kind of soft, sad person, and I think a lot of comedians are. And so that felt just like such a kernel of truth. And I knew like, okay, you can't just have one flashback. You can't. You have to like, and then I came up with this like fun structure of like, I'm going to have them have a scene together, and then around it, the chapters before and after are going to be like revisions. They're going to fix whatever happened. And they're maybe not cognizant of it at the present moment, but you as the reader get to be like, oh, get to see the theme. So it was a mix of like, I had this one idea for a scene, and then also like as a structural thing, it kind of clicked into place.
How did you keep it all straight with the two timelines?
Yeah, I think the key thing is, and maybe this is something that people would have like a gripe with it, is like I wanted the flashbacks to feel as murky as memories. This is one thing that happened. It is a moment in time. There is so much other stuff going on. Like there are parts of Del we don't know as a teenager. There are other interactions that are alluded to, of them doing funny things to each other, of Del sticking forks in his lawn. But the moments that like, and I think this is true about memory, it's like you could have had the best time ever at a thing, but if like something really crazy or weird or emotional happens, like that really sticks with you. So I wanted to pull like one thing from like each year of high school, and I kind of worked around like the main, like whatever, the big moments of high school. First day, a big dance, when everyone starts becoming like sexually active, and I kind of built it out from there.
So there's a line about the high school experience of like the cafeteria scene and how you either have friends or you starve, and that made me think of Mean Girls. Mm-hmm. So if you were in Mean Girls, which table would you be at?
I probably would have been at like the like artsy like am I allowed to say naughty words?
I mean, yeah.
Like the artsy druggy table. But like the part of like artsy druggy that's like also a little bit overachieving. It's like this kid really wants to get into RISD or like a really good art school. Like they have their thing and they're like trying hard in their own way. I moved around. I definitely floated in high school, but I think if I had been in a high school as big as Mean Girls, I would not have been floating around. That didn't seem like the environment where people were floating. I think I would have been like I would have been at the like mean gay artsy burnout druggy overachieving art kid table. What table would you have been at?
Probably the jocks or the artsy kids.
Oh wow, jocks!
Yeah.
Were you a sporty?
I did volleyball, basketball, track and cross country in high school, and then I was a Division I rower.
Oh my god! Okay, yeah, you would have been at the what is it? Aggressive jocks. They're like anger issues.
Because I was also I was on the speech team, and I took tests competitively, and I did art. So
you were like an overachieving freak. Yeah, you would have been at that
Enneagram
table.
3 with a very strong 4-wing.
Yeah, I'm a 4-wing 3. I think yes.
Somewhere in there. I'm like, I'm right in the middle.
Yeah.
It's like it could go either way depending on
That's
my mood.
crazy.
Which I guess leans more towards 4.
Yeah, well, you're a fire sign too, so that it all plays together.
I'm a fire sign and a redhead.
Yeah, I love that.
All the sass.
Yeah.
There are a lot of song references throughout this book. And I gotta ask, why Semi-Charmed Kind of Life as the tattoo?
This is like a nod to my teenage self. So I was in love with a man when I was in high school, and he wasn't a man, he was a fellow child. But his favorite band was Third Eye Blind, and I was like, okay. And so I loved Third Eye Blind, and I loved the music, and unfortunately, like, I hate this idea that, like, sometimes teen girls are introduced to things through like shitty guys, but it happens. And I like loved Third Eye Blind in high school, and they were such like, I remember I would take the subway home, and I remember listening to Semi-Charmed Life and like walking home and being like, I wish I was literally anywhere on earth. Like, I'm so ready to leave Philadelphia, which is so crazy because it's a big city, but like no matter where you're from, you always want to leave. So when I thought about Dell, like, she's like crazier than me, she's more courageous, but I was like, we both love, like, her music taste is my music taste. I was like, we both love Third Eye Blind. She's the type of person who would be like, Semi-Charmed Life, that is so me, dog. I'm getting that under my butt cheek. And it's just like a funny thing to have on yourself.
As someone who was also introduced to Tool by a terrible
you get
dude,
it.
I get it.
Yeah.
How did you decide what songs you wanted to reference in what point? Did the song come first, or did the scene come first?
Are you talking about a specific song?
No, there's just so many.
Yeah.
Like, even the Paved Paradise and Put Up something else.
Oh, yeah. That is something I say a lot. I literally said it to Hannah yesterday when we were driving somewhere. We were driving past the zoo. I said they paved Paradise and they put up a parking lot. Because I was talking about how zoos make me sad. And so I think, like, there are some things that come just from, like, clacking around in my brain, but specifically, like, using Sex and Candy, I had this idea of them, what happens when that song plays, and I was like, I needed a song that would fit in well. It had to make sense with, like, their music taste. Like, Eddie really likes he likes rock, he likes prog rock, he likes indie rock, he's just in the rock world, he likes pop rock. So he would have that music station on in the car. And then, like, time-wise, it had to be, like, the type of thing that would hit local radio. And then I was watching True Blood with friends, and I love True Blood. But it was my first time watching True Blood. And have you ever watched it?
Oh, so many times.
Yeah. The first
Northman.
time, Eric Northman sitting in a throne, legs splayed open, and a woman is dancing a fang banger. Can you imagine YouTube censors me for saying fang banger? That would be really funny. Anti-vampire sentiment is on the rise. There's a woman dancing on a pole, and that's the song playing, and it's such a sexy moment, and it's such a sexy song. I was like, I was like, and it came back to me. I was like, oh my God, that song, like, that's perfect. It just makes sense for all of the things that are needed for that moment.
I'm just remembering that scene now.
Yeah, it's really good.
Give me a couple minutes.
Yeah, sure. You take your time. I'm here to talk to you about.
I mean, True Blood was such an iconic show of its time.
And you watch it, and like it gets a lot of things right. Like, still, it just has endured and maybe even, like, gotten better, and the parts of it that are campy and goofy have gotten campier and goofier. It's such a good show.
Let's take camp a little different way.
Yeah. Oh.
To the twist on the only one bed situation.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I haven't seen a bunk bed as the only one bed.
Yeah.
And them still share the one bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about crafting that scene with that crazy hotel.
Yeah. It's a series of things that I find funny. Kind of just like shoved together. So I don't know if you've ever been to the Jersey Shore, but it is a very popular thing that there are these motels with like the doors that face outward, and they're themed, especially in places like Wildwood, and they have really cool themes, like, and they're like kind of gaudy and they're kind of campy and they're kind of weird, but they're themed nevertheless. And there's one in Ocean City that my husband's family always, frequented for many years, which was called the Impala Inn, and it had like a sort of like Santa Fe vibe, like Santa Fe via Pier 1 imports. And that was like a big inspiration for the Bethlehem Inn, which is either themed around like someone who's only read the Bible's idea of the Middle East, or it's based on the Bible. And that's a TBD. And those rooms, those like strange kind of like one-off rooms, are a thing that kind of happen at Jersey Shore motels. So I'm like, what's the kookiest, craziest situation? And I also think it's fun to like sort of, I love Only One Bed, but it is so like the hand of God coming down and being like, here you go. Like, it's such like a treat. I was like, it can't be that easy. And my friend was like, what if you did a trundle? And I was like, no, that's too crazy, because it's also 2 beds. I was like, bunk bed, and then I'll have Eddie be like, thank God, at least it's not a trundle. And yeah, it was a fun space to set up and to have them play around in, and yeah, things kind of came naturally as like little jokes as I set up the environment.
And you made a little announcement recently.
I did.
That you have a second book coming.
I do. I'm so excited.
Can you tell us about second book?
Yeah, absolutely. So my second book I just announced will be coming out spring 2025. It's called, tentatively right now, the title is 32 Days in May. Books do get retitled, and that's fine. I really like this title. I hope it sticks. Manifesting. And it's
So you had a little hint on Instagram before that.
Yeah, I did.
I see you.
I did.
I see you.
I did. On June 1st, I posted it, and I had a caption that said, Happy May 32nd. Yeah. You see it. I'm trying to be Taylor Swift. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, who isn't?
Who isn't? Seriously. She's nailed it. But yeah, the story is we're back in Evergreen, this time with a native Philadelphian who is staying at her parents' shore house after a really rough winter where she was diagnosed with lupus after an extreme flare-up that led to her losing her job, and an ensuing depression that followed when she is sort of set up with a burnt-out former TV actor who is also coming off a sort of rough time. At the moment, her favorite movie, or a movie she can't stop watching, is one called Sweet November, which is the inspiration for 32 Days in May. It's a movie from like the 2000s. I think it's literally from 2000, but it's also a remake of an old movie from the 60s, where a woman who is a lot sicker than Nadia, and a man who is like kind of like a advertising a-hole decide to date just for the month of November. And it's starring Keanu Reeves and Charlize Theron. I don't know how to pronounce it. And
no one does.
It's a kind of bad movie, but I saw it and I cried, and Keanu Reeves is perfect in it. Even though maybe the source material isn't the best, he had me crying. And I was like, this movie they deserve a happy ending, and it deserves to be a little bit better. I'm not going to say mine. It deserves to be a little bit better. And so that's the inspiration. They agree to date for the month of May. And then things happen.
Shenanigans
happen. If you've seen Sweet November, you kind of you know sort of what goes on. But of course I had to put a little twist on it.
As one does.
It's inspired by. It is not a retelling, per se.
In your bio, it says that you were probably fretting about niche historical events most have forgotten. What niche historical events are you fretting about?
Yeah. Thank you so much for asking. So I am well, we're going to get the history lesson now. We're getting into it.
Let's go.
Yeah. I am Italian and American. My father is from Italy. I spent a lot of time there growing up. I went to university there, so I'm very connected to that part of myself. And something I'm constantly thinking about is the unification of Italy, which is something that no one cares about. Another thing I'm thinking about very frequently is the Italian fascist resistance movement during World War II. I'm constantly thinking about how Rome was declared an open city to protect it, and then that kind of resulted in Catch-22, which is a very famous book that not a lot of people have actually read to understand. There's also a movie called Rome, Open City that's one of my favorite neo-realistic films, which was a film movement that came out of Italy after World War II, kind of unpacking what life was like in the country. A lot of people don't know this, but Italy was unified in like the 1860s, so it's a relatively new country. It's a younger country than the United States, which is why there's like so many different identities in such a small piece of land, and that unification has had just such a huge ripple effect on so many things that happen, and for such a small country, it's sort of always in the mix because of where it is geographically, and so I'd never stop thinking about that.
I know nothing.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like I think about Fellini a lot and how he sort of like cultivated this idea of Italy that was exported, and it really was like, it's the spaghetti and tomato sauce and the red and white checkered tablecloth, and these ideas of like Italy as sort of like a decadent place to eat food and have a lot of sex, and also, but Fellini was also doing other things, but those, we don't pick up on that, and I'm always thinking about it.
So Italy is your Roman Empire?
Oh, might drop the mic. Podcast over. I guess it is.
Rome is literally your Roman.
Rome is literally my Roman Empire. I lived in Rome for 4 years. I loved it. By the end, I wanted to rip my hair out, but it is just, to this day, like one of my favorite places on earth.
And the last question we always ask.
Yeah.
Because this is Literary Hype. What books are you hyped about?
Oh my gosh. I'm so hyped about, so I have just like a stack of books that has been growing because I haven't had much time to read lately. I'm so excited to read Just for the Summer. I hope I'm not screwing up the title, by Abby Jimenez. Yeah. I'm so excited for Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. I'm so excited for Whenever You're Ready by Rachel Runia Katz. That's coming out, I think, in September, so I have some time. I am so excited about Not for the Faint of Heart by Lex Croucher. I'm so excited for, I don't know, there's so many. I'm so excited to, I have been listening to The Sugar Queens by Sarah Addison Allen. I always mess up her name. I'm so sorry. I'm such a huge fan. And the audiobooks are so wonderful. I can't wait to have a long drive to just like listen to all of them. I have a lot to read, and I can't wait.
Well, thanks so much for being part of Literary Hype and talking about Summertime Punchline.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for asking me such thoughtful questions about Summertime Punchline. It's really so cool. When you write it, being a debut is hard. You want everything all at once, and that's just not how publishing works. So anytime someone has actually read my book, I'm so excited. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again to Betty for taking time out of her St. Louis tour stop to talk with me about her book, Summertime Punchline. We had a grand old time hanging out at the bookstore. If you'd like to get a copy of this book, the links to do so are down in the description for you. And while you're that side of the video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Literary Hype if you have not done so already, and make sure you click that little bell so you get notifications. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.